yeah. You hear that song? You know what that is, don't you?
Music
I think
to
I know
my
what time it
ears.
is. It's
What time is it?
It's time to throw down. It's time for a Theology Nerd Throwdown. That's right. What is up, BoDaddy?
Trip Fuller. How are you, man?
Well, I mean, look, we decided we were going to do some more TNT episodes, and it's not even been a year. So like, if we keep this trajectory where you know, where there's like, oh, you know, I start a podcast and stuff, and then we meet because you were listening, and then like we start doing stuff, then we start TNT, this other podcast that now there's like 30,000 people that probably don't even know that Theology Nerd Throwdown was a thing, and y'all can go back and listen to it because we did it quite regularly, and then you know, you move and you've moved again. And we're like, look, it's time to nerd out with our geeks out, you know?
For the uninitiated, this is going to be a little bit different of an experience because this is not the same format as many of our other podcast projects.
No, it's not. It's not the same format because this is like the format where like friends that just happen to be nerds nerd while they friend. And all sorts of hootenannies, Bo. Hootenannies. I like to call the BoDaddy the point forward of theological podcasting. Like Magic Johnson, except, you know, not an NBA legend or Laker.
I have missed that. I haven't heard that phrase in years, and I have missed it. That's music to my ears, man.
Well, so for people that don't know, like when I started the podcast with my friend Chad, and his nickname on the podcast was the Crawdaddy.
The Crawdaddy.
And the story's not safe for work to tell the origin of the Crawdaddy story. So then when Bo started working with both of us, and then it was BoDaddy. And then some people may remember, though, even all of the feeds where Nathan was the co-pilot of sorts are off the feed now because, you know, I don't know how to use the internet, and only the last 150 episodes are there.
Okay.
But he didn't want to be called like Nate Daddy. And so I just started calling him Big Nasty Nate.
Oh.
And he edited it out of the podcast every time.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, why don't you want the internet hearing your friend call you Big Nasty Nate? They'll ask, where did that name come from?
Yeah. No, a good nickname, it has a couple characteristics to it. And one of them that I especially like about this is that it's slightly suggestive of like maybe an innuendo or maybe a little risque, but it's not, right? It doesn't cross any lines. It just hints that, you know, like our show, that, you know, we're gonna push the boundaries a little bit. We're gonna tiptoe around the edges.
Just tickle the tips. Now, normally, when we do this, I enjoyed it because Bo came in with plans. You know, he prepared. A lot of times he would write blog posts or say, "Hey, Trip, here's what is happening on the internet when people are arguing about theology and stuff." And I think we should order it this way. And we, you know, early on, Bo's like, "Here's an idea. I'm going to interrupt you and force you to explain something, or just move on, because normal people don't need
a
20-minute answer with 3 sides." And people loved it. This was like the time Homebrewed in general kind of had its second big growth. Like early on, it was like, connected to all the emerging church stuff. And then we started TNT, and it was an on-ramp for a lot of people that, you know, maybe weren't ready for a 2-hour conversation in philosophical theology.
Right. Yeah.
So we're gonna catch up and stuff this time, and then assuming
and then it's on.
People don't say, Trip, Bo, look, y'all were like 30 and in your 30s and 20s last time. Now you're in your 40s and 50s. Like go to bed. go to bed early. Like, if that's not what happens, then next time we'll go back to normal format. But we need to catch up because there's a bunch of people that don't know you, Bo.
I know. And I'm looking forward. If I haven't met you yet, I'm really looking forward to getting to know you.
Yeah. And that's because Bo wants you to come to Theology Beer Camp, just like I want him to come to Theology Beer Camp this October 17th and 19th in Denver, Colorado. It's going to be
there.
epic. Yeah. And
if I have to bike there, I'll be there. I don't care.
See, that's one of the things that you've done since
I did. I picked up.
You're on the podcast. Is you picked up biking. So
I did.
So no, here's the way I want to ask this question, Bo. You and your family were very committed Christians in a part of the church that doesn't usually generate Claremont School of Theology students.
Oh my goodness!
Right, your dad was a very influential in a very different part of the church. I have been in a car where you and Peter Rollins are debating the kind of exorcisms that are most effective. And that's when I realized that you and Pete came from different parts of the church.
Right.
And so, like, when I think of like where you've gone and where you are, like, give us the story of like that weird transition of coming from one place to then being Claremont to then end up up north and get to the new church that you're leading now.
Oh my goodness. I would love to tell this story, but can I just say the next thing I want to ask you is I want to find out, last time you and I did one of these, we were both in Los Angeles. And so I want to find out what your journey has been like since LA.
Yeah.
But yeah, so here's the thing. And I should tell everybody that I just lost my dad. He died in early January. And so we're in the midst of planning his memorial. Back in it's going to be in New Jersey. He lived just across the line in New York. And so it has been a very interesting journey. So I was born on a dairy farm in Ohio. My folks were farmers, and then my dad had a terrible accident, almost died. Through the process, came to Christ. Mom and dad came to Christ. They moved us down to Toccoa Falls, Georgia, to train for ministry, and then got a gig up in Chicagoland. So in the 80s, I was raised in outside Chicago. And then my dad became a professor. So he was thoroughly evangelical. He was ordained with a Free Methodist denomination, but ended up getting a gig with a group called the Christian Missionary Alliance, and moved us up to Saskatchewan, Canada, my freshman year of high school. And then after I graduated high school, he got a gig at another seminary in Nyack, New York, and he ended up becoming the head of the Doctor of Ministry program at Nyack. So when I decided to get married very young, my folks weren't too happy about it. So my wife and I moved our first year. We took a year out of school because I had gotten a call to ministry up in Canada when I was playing semi-pro football up in Canada. And we moved to Nyack, New York, so my folks and my new wife could get to know each other a little better. When we tried to get back to Canada to finish training for ministry, did not know the rule that I, as a dual citizen, marrying an American, can't come back into Canada as if nothing had happened. And so we couldn't get back in for the beginning of the semester. And through a miraculous string of events, ended up in Redding, California at Simpson College. Got ordained with the Christian Missionary Alliance, and then was part of a church plant in Saratoga Springs, New York. For 11 years, I ended up becoming the senior pastor there, one of the best experiences of my life. But during that time, I started reading people like Len Sweet and Brian McLaren and N.T. Wright. And I got a slap on the wrist from my denomination saying,
or as I call them, gateway drugs.
They are gateway drugs.
Like, back in the 90s, people, that's like what the theological version of DARE for evangelicals would warn you about. It's like, once you read Lynn Sweet's Soul Salsa, you're 2 steps from salsaing down a slippery slope of relativism into probably bestial polyamory.
Oh, no.
If they know what that is. Now, right, everyone's legalizing weed, and now, it's just like we should legalize McLaren.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't even need a new Christianity. Let's just make it the regular one. Just move on.
I would sign that proposal.
No more gateway drug for McLaren. Let's just make it normative.
Trip, start a petition. I'll sign it.
All right. We got 2. And with
All
that
right.
fast a growth rate, Bo,
Yeah.
we're taking over. All right.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt your story.
No. I was a fantastic aside. Where the journey gets really interesting is that was like 2004 or 5 that happened. By 2008, I was just awakened to like Derrida and deconstruction, and something had changed. I used to speak at like colleges, like Campus Crusade stuff, and I actually went to the Billy Graham School of Evangelism. I was an apologist, but around the mid 2000s, something changed, and no one was asking me the questions I was so well practiced at answering. So I decided I needed more education, and in my denomination, you didn't need a master's to be a pastor, but I decided I wanted to go back and get some, because I knew something was wrong and I needed to update or something. Well, I found this school named George Fox Seminary out in Portland. So I moved across the country again in 2008, and I started a podcast. It was called An Everyday Theology, and I had about 1,100 listeners by the end, and I had a wonderful seminary education. But during that education, one of my professors came to me and said, "Hey, the faculty's been talking, and we think you have potential as a professor. So we want you to switch out of the MDiv program, and we want you to Master of Theology, and then which leads to the PhD." And so that was just the biggest, shot in the arm. It was the biggest vote of confidence I had gotten. It resonated with me, and I just loved it. So I switched, and that last year of seminary, 2010, I applied to 3 schools. I got into all 3. So I had to make the decision. Do I go get a doctorate in leadership over in Gonzaga at Spokane, Washington? Do I go down to Fuller and study with Wilderness, who I desperately wanted to study with? Or do I go to Claremont, which I had just been watching the History Channel, and like 3 of the people in one of these documentaries was from Claremont. And there was something about Claremont starting an interreligious university. They were on the first page of Time magazine. And I said, I think I'm going to pick Claremont. And so that's how I ended up down there. Now, I was working for the Free Methodist at that point up in Olympia, Washington. And when I moved down to Claremont, I switched to being United Methodist.
Mm-hmm.
And my first Sunday in Claremont, I was sitting in the United Methodist Church 3 rows behind John Cobb. And it was like this California sunshine, making the switch from free to united. I'm still not sure if it's better to be free or united, and that's the funny thing is the free aren't united and the united aren't free, but whatever. It's
branding.
It's branding. Yeah. But I just loved being at Claremont. And the big bonus was that when I decided on Claremont, I reached out to you and you said, I have a little idea. Why don't you leave behind your little podcast and migrate it over to Homebrewed? Try and bring as many people over as you can, and let's combine powers and form a tag team.
And that's when we started TNT.
Yeah.
People, some people see the video of this, which was not a live option then. We had this really weird hookup, this red box thing, and this website called Mixler that would live stream audio from a room that I'm not sure we were supposed to be in, but Phil Clayton gave us a key to.
Mm-hmm.
And we would each week do like Theology Nerd Throwdown from this office no one was using, and take calls and stuff, and live stream it out.
Right.
Like we did all sorts of weird stuff.
We had a voicemail line back then.
Oh yeah. Now we got the speak pipe. Before that, Chad and I had a Google Voice number, and the phone number was 678-590-BREW, because I had a song I would sing.
You would sing it, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was committed. But I think part of that moment, there's the whole fun of being in grad school and having other people so you can talk about shit. And then there's the like you also do creative projects with each other. We helped organize lots of events and did podcasts live and stuff. Like not too long after that was the 5th anniversary of the podcast where we did it live with Caputo and stuff and so but that kind of the Theology Nerd Throwdown gave a space for more of our personalities to be a part of it rather than kind of just hosting a conversation.
Yeah. When you're interviewing somebody, you're prioritizing them, your platform, right? Giving them
theoretically. Sometimes I you're not the only person that's given me notes that said, "Trip, you realize you talked as much as your guest." And that's why I've started saying it's not so much an interview as a conversation.
Smart. Oh, that's smart. That's good branding too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read your book, but also I have things I'd like to talk to you about. And if you're boring, I will decide I want to talk more.
Can I just say another thing that happened in that era that was so
that we drank a lot of Arrogant Bastard?
Thrilling
beer?
We did. Yeah.
It was a lot.
It's so malty now. My palate's changed, I think.
Well, all palates matter, Bo. And different times, different places. But okay, but you still have it. So we're at Claremont. You have to say something about the Loft, and then going north. And
so I ended up getting employed at Westwood United Methodist Church, ironically, where Claremont is now living.
Yeah, they moved closer to downtown.
Yeah, so in just outside Beverly Hills in Westwood by UCLA, and I got a job there. And one of the things I did is I was brought onto a team that was dreaming of a new way to do church, because what was happening in the sanctuary was so sort of set, institutionally, but also well-funded.
And it's a beautiful sanctuary with a really nice organ.
It's like a cathedral.
If you're gonna do high church, that's how you're supposed to do it.
The Schaefer Memorial organ has an endowment that was more than my salary. It's well-funded, but it was dying, right? As an expression and in attendance. But they had the luxury and the vision, and I would say the daring, to try something different. And so we started this thing called the Loft LA. We gutted what used to be the old chapel, and we created sort of a conversation space that was half coffee shop, half sound studio. And it was one of the most incredible things. It grew and it took off, and it actually is doing fantastically well today. It is outgrown that space and actually had to move across and take over what used to be the fellowship hall. They recreated the aesthetic and the vibe. It's an incredible thing. And during that time, 2 really amazing highlights of my life. Homebrewed grew from about 10,000 to over 30,000 engagements and downloads. If you think about how big of an audience that was back then, like the energy level that surrounded it wasn't just our live events, like our phone line, our blog, like it was electric. It was like catching lightning in a bottle. We had so much fun, and we were rowdy and irreverent, and we just it was the early days.
Since we can't fire ourselves,
it was wild, man. But the other thing that happened is that we started getting very cool. Instead of us having to reach out to authors and thinkers and say, would you come on our cast? People started reaching out to us saying, when Raza Aslan came out with his book, his publishing company and publicity crew reached out to us. And when the Noah film was being made, and they said, we think we have a theological problem with the audience, that they're not going to enjoy this. They reached out to us as part of a team to say, give us some feedback on, we think we're going to get beat up for this movie. And so help us try and soften it. It was just like, we got invited into this thing, and then we started doing live events, like whether it was Rob Bell or at Wild Goose West. I mean, that era. So it enabled me to bring in people like Peter Rollins and Diana Butler Bass and other people at the Loft.
Yeah.
And so my two worlds lived in harmony and dovetailed in a way that was, one of the highlights of my life. It was that season from 2010 to 2016 was one of the best seasons of my life. And then I got a job as a visiting professor of theology at, guess where? George Fox Seminary.
Yeah.
I got to return to my alma mater as a professor. It was incredible. So I left LA 2016 and moved up to Portland. And for a year, I was the professor there. It was one of the biggest honors and best experiences.
And you got to work with your longtime mentor, Randy.
Yes. So, funny background story. So the position that I was going to take over came with, like, I think 10 or 11 classes I would teach throughout the year in the summer term. But Randy was on sabbatical. And since I needed to get experience and I wanted to beef up my resume, I actually offered to teach those classes so that they didn't have to hire an adjunct for each one. And they're like, you are a godsend. So I got to teach 16 classes, including 5 of Randy's syllabi.
Yeah.
That's an honor to.
Well, all I know, I'm only thinking of the grading. That's
that was a lot of grading.
You want to get half an adjunct, just the person to grade?
Now, during that year, I wrote a book with Randy while he was in sabbatical called Decolonizing Evangelicalism.
How's that going? Decolonizing Evangelicalism. It was a joke, Bo.
I thought you meant how are the book sales?
No.
The project?
The
project's not going
Evangelicalism.
Well. I think we're going backwards.
Okay. But that sounds like an episode title anyway. But it was just a joke.
We should have Randy on.
Oh, no, we should. By the way, everyone, if you, in the next month or so, I'm spending quite a bit of time and money putting every episode that used to exist back on the internet, where you can actually get it through a podcast app instead of having to like scroll through the page.
Really?
The episode live at Wild Goose West with Randy
and Richard
Twist is one of the funniest things. Because, well, Bo and I, like, I think I drove like 20 gallons of beer in bottles that I brewed,
giant coolers,
up to where Corvallis, Oregon from LA. I thought when someone was like, oh, it's about 2 hours into Oregon, I had no idea how long California was. But let's just say 2 hours into Oregon, if you're starting in Los Angeles, is a long drive. That was the day I discovered the car I bought when I moved to LA didn't have cruise control. Because you don't use cruise control in LA because
there's no sense. You can't.
Yeah, you don't go the same speed very often. It's 80 or 5, and so the Culture Cast team was talking before they got up there
with
Rachel Held Evans. This was right when the Baptist bookstore had kicked out one of her books for saying the word vagina.
Is that right? And that's why they kept saying it so much.
Yeah, and it was. Now this is late night in like a kind of like semi-round outdoor theater type thing. We had Austin and his friends all came, and we had like a live band. It was like a late night show, which is like, this was the origin of what I wanted to do at beer camp. But by the time Randy and Richard got up there with us, we had fully sampled, a host of high gravity beverages. And
do you know who was on the tap that night?
No.
I just blanked on his name. He works with Richard Rohr. Mike
Morrell?
Mike Morrell was on the tap that night.
Yes. He shares.
He was great.
Yeah, because he brought all those high gravity Canadian Belgian beers. That's what it was. Whatever it was, but there's a bit in it where I can't remember if it was Richard or Randy. I made some joke and they one of them starts laughing and then he goes, "The oxygen has left my head and this is really funny." And after that, I just was derailed. And I just like you can hear Bo going, "But I want to get him to say these really cool things." And Randy's joining me and derailing it. And Richard and you are trying to have a serious conversation. Like y'all have like your theology points, and Randy and I are enjoying how uncomfortable you were that we were just making jokes. And it's one of those things where like you can tell like my mentor's here, like this is going to be good. I've been thinking about this forever. And Richard's like on the vibe with you, and Randy and I are on the ends giggling. And anyway, it's like the personality of all four were there, and it was one of those moments. Then we get back and realize that John Cobb's grandson is camping next to us.
That's right.
At Wild Goose West, and then we end up going in a teepee. It was like it was you're right. Those years were epic, and the fact that on the way up there, me and Gregory Stevens, who rode with me, we get pulled, and we're trying to explain why we have like all those bottles of homebrewed beer, our recording equipment and guitars and stuff in this little car, and Greg is like, "We're going to a Christian music and arts festival."
Man, I tell you, sometime you and I have to talk. The fallout from Wild Goose West was that some people who had been slightly interested in the emergent movement and conversation were turned off because it was so rowdy and
Well, and by that they probably just mean what we planned and then didn't do.
Well, I know.
On the they did say we don't have anything happening late at night, so if y'all just want to do whatever you want to do, you can.
I mean, they
just told us every night, y'all at 11 o'clock, y'all or 10 o'clock, y'all do whatever you want till sound curfew.
The programming was over right at dinner, and there was and they said, "Will you be the evening entertainment?"
Yes, like whenever the last concert ended at 9:30 or whatever, people had nothing to do but drum circles. And
they did drum circles,
and whatever we ended up doing,
right? Whatever that was,
I know
it was fun.
Oh, it was fun.
Well, during my year 2016 of being a professor, so this is now 2017. Found out I wasn't going to get the tenure track position because they were committed to a diversity hire, and because I was at the time writing my dissertation on race and leadership, I couldn't really protest their commitment to a diversity hire since that was actually my focus. So I was caught between a rock and a hard place, if you will. And my wife came to me and said, "I have an idea," because I was applying to jobs all around the country, right? And she said, "What if we put down roots here, and what you do for a living is the variable, but where we live is the given, so that I can start a practice," because she had gotten her master's in clinical therapy. And so she wanted to start a practice. And so we did that. And I made a call to somebody I had met at the Loft, LA, named Beth Estock. I told her I would be interested in taking a small church and doing an experiment in ecclesiology and seeing if I could turn it around. So they appointed me to Vermont Hills in Southwest Portland, and I gutted the sanctuary and created a loft-ish space, but tried to combine it with the best of what was happening in the Westwood Sanctuary. So it was like a hybrid space, and it was phenomenal. Another highlight of my life, some of my seminary students migrated over there with me, and we turned that thing around, and the people of Vermont Hills became some of my favorite humans that I've ever known. I loved my time there so much. Ended up becoming a licensed local pastor with the UMC because my former denomination revoked my credentials.
They were freeing you from them because they're the free Methodists.
They were no, I was with the CMA at that point.
Okay.
So they which is fine, because you know what? As a relational thinker, somebody who prioritizes relational thought, I was no longer in a relationship with them. So it's fine that they didn't want to hold my credentials, but it caused me a real problem in several ways, including the fact that in the Methodist, they can recognize an ordained minister of a different denomination. They have like a whole thing for it, but they can't recognize somebody with no credentials. So I had to get credentials. It was a real soul searching moment for me if I wanted to stay in local church ministry.
Yeah.
But I decided that I wanted to do it. Now, the trade-off with becoming a credentialed Methodist is you enter into something called an appointment system of itineracy.
Yeah. Or as like actual Methodists call it, when the Holy Ghost tells you to go somewhere, you kind of have to go there.
You do.
Otherwise, you lose access to your healthcare and retirement plan.
That's right. You have to respond to the call positively.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm actually called here. That's important. So
but you haven't told them where you are now yet.
I know. So here's what happened.
It's still a mystery.
2 years ago, I was 49 or getting ready to turn 49. And I got to be honest, I had some regrets about, some things that had happened over the last 20 years.
In 20 years, you have regrets?
I did, yeah.
I did. Oh, it only takes me like a week. So you're generally nicer than me, so it might take years for you. But 20 years, man, I would have forgot half the things I regretted.
Yeah. Well, they were ever present in my mind, and my body. So, bad habits and regrets and shame and, every manner of category. So what I did is I made a list of 49 things I wanted to do in my 49th year. And I did every one of them by the grace of God, including number 48 was reaching out to you and saying, for my 50th birthday, I would love to record a TNT.
And boom.
9 months later,
we have a baby. It's a long like not the wick, the thing when you light the bomb.
Fuse,
long fuse. But
that's true.
But you did do the birthday podcast, 15th birthday of Homebrew podcast.
That was wonderful. That was really fun. I think about that a lot. Well, my 50th year has been very eventful. So thank God that her spirit prompted me to do those 49 things. One of them, by the way, was being a part of a group called From Aging to Saging, based on the book. And the wisdom that was in that group as sort of a cohort of learning was incredible. And
the saging there is like helping other people, like becoming a sage with your maturity, not the burning of sage. Just to clarify, for Claremont,
that's right.
The hermeneutics of Claremont, from aging to saging, the wrinkles go away.
That's amazing. You're right, because like in Native American circles, it would be smudging, but it's not. That's not the sage we're talking about.
But it's no either or here. You can both and. You can sage while you sage, or be a sage that sages.
Yeah, I needed to grow up. I noticed that people were treating me different. I was no longer the young guy with big ideas, but younger people were looking to me in a different way. And I could feel it, the change of seasons. And so I'm so grateful that I did those 49 things, because my 50th year has not gone great. But by God's grace, I'm handling it better than I would have at 47, 48.
Do you remember what you did when was it 40? Was it 40 the year that you came up? When you said, you were talking to me and Tim Burnett.
Yeah.
And, I feel like it was around 40 where you just said at some point, it gets to Lent maybe in your 40th year. And you're like, for Lent, I'm just giving up.
I'm giving
Like,
up.
there were a number of difficult things near the time you're struggling with your
That's
mom's
true.
health and stuff,
That's true, yeah.
and
I
you have
gave
this
up.
smile, right? And you're, like, telling us what's going on, and, I mean, this is a normal thing,
Yeah.
definitely probably okay, if you're with, masculine of center individuals and
Yep.
vulnerability is not easy, you're, like, telling us what's going on, but also, like, "Oh, I'm doing this, trying this," and then you go, "Hey, for Lent, I'm just giving up," and it came out of nowhere, and Tim and I are like, "What's going
Yeah.
on?" And you're like, "Ah, it feels good to say that, but
Yeah.
I am. In 40 days, I'll decide what I'm gonna do." Like, and it was one of those times,
Yeah.
like, and you just know these things happen, in life, and, like, I remember the first time we had a 2-hour phone call or whatever, and at some point in the last year,
Mhm.
um, the later that day, we start texting again because both of us, our partners were like, "Well, y'all are, like, chipper." And I was like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, I talked to Bo for, like, 2
Mhm.
hours. I didn't do really
Mhm.
any work this afternoon." And then just to go through, like, all the things you haven't got to tell each other, the details of your life
Mhm.
and stuff, uh, like, I remember that experience because in my head, like, what having good friends is like, you can just go like, "For Lent, I'm
Mhm.
just giving up," and you just do this, like, rant or whatever, and then you're like, "Alright, that feels better."
Yeah.
And anyway, sorry for like, I remember that
No, that's a
moment and then
funny
thinking
memory.
about all that you can pick whatever parts you wanna share for
Yeah.
what's going on now,
Yeah.
but, the like, you can't you can't it's, like, really hard the older you get to have relationships where there's enough, like, traction and
Mhm.
memories and stories
Mhm.
that you can say something
Right.
and know you're actually being heard, you know?
Yep, I've read several things about how difficult it is to make new friends, especially as, for anybody, right, in their once you're over 40 or so, but especially for men. And it has been really, um, refreshing to have conversations with people. So I have a group of friends, and now back with you, that you've had a long history together, and, like, you can remember when things weren't so bright, I was in a dark place, and so we've walked through that together, you know? Um, and it's just amazing to be able to call back on good times and not so good times, and, for somebody to have some frame of reference for what you're talking about, and for you not to have to bring them up to speed all the time
Yeah.
on the background story.
Mhm.
So, long story short, I got a call. So my birthday's in March. So this is like 2 weeks before I'm gonna turn 50. I got a call that they were calling me to Twin Falls, Idaho. I've never been to Twin Falls, Idaho. I would never intentionally seek out Twin Falls, Idaho, for a
Unless you
move.
wanted to go to the one bridge in America
The
that you
one
can
bridge,
jump
yeah,
off of legally
yeah,
every day of the year.
that's right. Base jumping's huge here. Um, but I knew that this was God's call. And so I went home, and you have 24 hours to say yes, by the way. When they call you,
It is like Mission Impossible.
it is. So I went home and, I told my wife that I'd gotten the call, and
Short fuse, 24-hour fuse.
that's right. And an amazing thing happened. We had gotten a puppy for Christmas, and we were tired of not having a backyard, but we couldn't afford a proper home in Portland because the market was so nutty. And so my wife looked up, saw the house prices in rural Southern Idaho, and we talked about a couple other things and about making the change, and she said, "Let's do it." So I was able to call my district superintendent back and tell her that, I'm in, and so it has been a whirlwind. So we got here, we bought a house, it's wonderful, things are going great, the congregation has been receptive to my innovative ideas, and, we're adjusting to life in Southern Idaho, which is so different than New York or Portland or LA, and, but unfortunately, about a month ago, my dad passed away, and so I've been, back in New York, trying to get his affairs in order and planning the memorial and doing all the things that have to be done there. So there has been between the move to Idaho and that, there have been several false starts for the Theology Nerd Throwdown reboot. And I'm so happy that finally we are on the mic again.
Oh yeah, me too. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And and people will find out. It's got its own vibe and such. Plus, one of the things that is,
would you say it's sassy?
Well, maybe. I mean, now I even have like a soundboard. Oh, so that you're like, oh, whoa, it just got it, that was like a hardcore.
That'll take me a while to get used to.
Yeah, you think that takes you a hard time to get used to. Wait till you say something too sassy, and I'm like, oh, Bo, yeah. You just got sassy. Like that. I could do that.
I don't know that this is a great development.
You don't?
I don't.
Because, see, that's like a more type of sound.
Oh, I thought
maybe
it was
like when you say like
Windows booting up. Windows 98.
Who remembers that? Who remembers that?
People in their 50s.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, you Gen Xers.
Okay, boomer. I don't know what that means.
I just know that when my teenager says that to me, I get offended. And I was like, that's your grandparents.
You should get offended.
That's your grandparents.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, I'm an elder millennial.
Yeah, you are.
We haven't even had like a president yet. We still aren't in charge of anything.
Yeah.
No. We should be, like, at some point. Like, it's not like they got a great batting average. But I'm just saying, we just took our parents' advice and see where that got us.
Don't you think it's weird that generation used to say don't trust anyone over 40 or over 50, but like now they're like 70?
Well, if all your life advice, you're looking in the mirror, somehow you managed to update it on a regular. It's just like, well, let me look. Because really what they're saying is like, we only trust ourselves.
Oh, wow, you went deep there.
Well, there you go. But so
yeah.
Now, being in a new location and having had the like starting something in like not even just LA, but like the creative district in LA, like UCLA, the film industry and all that stuff's there, and helping kind of form the Loft with Chris and such, and that congregation, and then going to Portland, which is its own like West Coast vibe, but a very different culture, right? And going into more inherited space where it's a hybrid thing. When you end up very much not in a coastal space, and go in with your kind of experiences and passion, and like when you got there to a place you said yes to within 24 hours, going, well, at least the dog have a yard and I have more places to bike. What's it like getting to know a place that quickly and go, I have no idea how the superintendent and the Holy Ghost decided I should be here. Like, what is getting to know a new community and culture, congregation thing like?
I was given a very bad gift. It turned out to be a gift, but it didn't look like one at the beginning. My first month and a half here, my DS was actually on like a sabbatical. We have this awesome program for self-care where they give us 6 to 8 weeks and called renewal leave. So she was on renewal leave. And unfortunately, the guy that I replaced had to leave pretty quickly. So I inherited, I don't know what to call it. Like, imagine if you found out that you were moving and you had to pack in like 30 minutes, what condition your house would be in. So it was interesting to come in and inherit. Everything was sort of there, but out of place, and it didn't really work together. I don't know if that makes sense. It was a chat. Let's call it a challenge, an opportunity to learn from scratch how this place works. And it turned out to be a real gift. I had to be dependent on my new congregation. So instead of me coming in as the whatever with my tools, like if I came in and I was a self-contained unit and I just sort of set up shop and I had everything I needed and I come self-sufficient. What's the opposite of that? What's not knowing how to log in to the computer in the sanctuary? And like nothing. So I was completely dependent, and it really put me in a good place of mutually walking together. And so every time we have a victory or a breakthrough on whether it's little things like technology or bigger things like we had families visit with kids, like you can feel there's like a synergy growing. And I don't know where it's gonna lead. I do know that I won't be able to do here what I did in Saratoga, New York, Olympia, Washington, Los Angeles, California, Portland, Oregon. It won't work here. So I'm in uncharted water, and it's sort of fun. But I have to admit, with the loss of my dad, I lost my mentor and my coach and my hero. So I'm in a really strange place of not knowing and just having to be um, open and dependent on spirit and her leading and guiding because like that Sophia the wisdom, right?
Yeah.
I it's all I have now because I don't have the resources of like the arts and hip culture of LA and Portland. I don't have seminarians that are going to help me invite new people. I don't have any of the tools or resources. I'm looking at a renovation project that has great bones. It's to use DIY language.
Yeah, but also you literally do the renovation, right?
That's true.
This is one of the things I'm like, you let the system that can just move you anywhere know that
Yeah,
you literally
I do.
you do the renovations physically.
Thank God that I am able-bodied enough to do carpentry. So I've already
Hey, Jesus knows what's up. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
See?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm in a place I don't feel vulnerable. I feel connected. I have to trust this congregation and our partners. We've started up some new partnerships with community groups. We give them space in our building, and in exchange, they partner with us for good in the world. I'm it's just a brand new experiment. So, flying back to New York and then flying back here, I didn't read. I usually read on the plane. I didn't read at all. I just sort of like David Putty and Seinfeld. I just stared at the seat ahead of me, just and I realized that, it's possible that my call here isn't going to be ecclesiology experimentation like I've done in my last 4 places. I think it might be theological innovation. And that would be very different. Like, what if I kept the form the same, but changed the content? So that's what I'm praying about right now.
Mhm.
But
Huh.
in fairness, I'm in such deep grief, I can't hear anything. I'm not receiving any messages.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
if you weren't observant that was what was happening, it would be a lot worse. If you're like,
Yeah.
I may be managing all this, but I have deep, crystal clear clarity as to what God wants for everything that's about to happen.
Like if somebody said to me, like, how's your discernment level these days? I'd be like, I don't know how to answer that question. Like, there is none. I'm dark. It's lights out right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally operating on autopilot. I'm just using muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
Like habitus. I'm just operating solely on autopilot.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's good to have some habitus, and plus, it does feel better if you say it in a different language.
Right? Well, can I just say that my favorite thing is embodied wisdom, right? Phronesis. And that's why praxis, right? The practice of faith and the reflective practice of communal discernment. It's why it's so valuable, right? This is the saging part.
Yeah.
Is the whole point of investing your life in a practice of faith in community is so that when you get seasons like this, because this is how life goes. So that when you hit a season like this, you don't fall apart. Right? You don't give up. You don't implode. So by trusting the people around you and by continuing the practices that have gotten you there, you do have muscle memory, right? Because that it's not operating on the front of your register of your brain. It has sunken down into the cells of your body, and your embodied ment holds you together through the tough times. And because it has sunk down into the cells of your body, you have muscle memory. Thank God. Because if, like yesterday, Trip, I went to heat up my coffee. I'd let it sit on the counter too long, and I put it in the dishwasher. Like, if I had to trust the cerebral cortex of my brain or whatever, right, makes those decisions, or, if I had to think through everything, I wouldn't make it. I wouldn't even make it out the door in the morning.
Yeah. There's a reason you don't have to think to breathe. Yeah.
Oh, ooh. If I quote you, I may not give you credit.
It's okay. I don't even remember if I didn't quote you.
Attribution is not my strength.
It's overrated. Right, it's overrated. I'll just say, like, I don't know. I was the one that typed the prompt in on AI.
Did you really?
No.
Oh, I don't trust.
Joke.
Oh,
it was a joke.
Sorry. See, I'm not sharp right now. I apologize.
Yeah, I know. What is up with that, Bo? Now you're going to give me some excuses that you're like, I'm not sharp. What? Come on,
man.
One of the things I like about being friends with you is one side of affection is just giving the other one a hard time.
That's true.
See, not all people appreciate snarky sides at each other as forms of endearment, and especially when you're good at it, right? Like, I laugh every time I re-listen to something we did, and you're like, I'm intervening to what Trip's doing right now and taking it a new direction. Things, we've been editing all these things for the Emerge series. So, like,
I can't wait to hear this.
Some of the live stuff. We remember when we were that event we did with Phyllis Tickle. She spoke at Fuller during her last book tour, right? And so, like,
that's right, yeah.
Ryan Bolger and her and Barry Taylor did this thing. Yeah. Tony Jones was there. I think he was helping with the whole tour or something. Well, there's a thing at Fuller, but then they wanted to do the live podcast because Fuller's not going to let us drink.
No. But
they have that UCC church that's basically Fuller seminaries all around. So we have the podcast at the UCC church. And that's where I made the beer with the Jack Daniels barrel in it.
Ooh.
For Phyllis, and there are a number of different homebrewers from that church that made beers and stuff. And
that's right.
So we had already right, had talking and things. So we're like, we're just going to do all the fun things we do at the podcast. And like we did Au Contraire, Mon Frere, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we did.
And I lost that night.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, because Tony guessed one of the secret words, and it was really, really frustrating. But it gets to the, you and I are talking to Phyllis, and I go into, we had collected questions, right? And I remember you going, okay, these ones are good, and I'm just having fun because I'm drinking all the beer, and like, this would be great. I'm gonna play the game. I got to get ready to play this game. Who knows? I'm just gonna, like, I'm there. That's the MO I'm in. And you're like, and I remember you going like, no, we got to keep this tight. This, like, you're like before going Trip, this, like, pay attention. This is what we're gonna do. Like, there are a bunch of new people here. You got all these Fuller people. They're here for Phyllis. Like, you, like, just stay on point. And like, here's the questions I want you to do. And we're going back and forth, and we're each doing 3 questions, and I gets to my second or third one, and I go, oh, this is a good one. And I just start discussing the topic of it, and you go, thanks, Trip. I think what he was going to ask, and you just say the question. She gets done with it, and she's amused by you doing this, and you go, I think it's time for a lightning round where I am going to ask Phyllis 3 or 4 more questions, and I am like rolling in laughter, and I realize everyone else is, but like, part of the whole reason that's funny is because everyone knows what roles we were playing.
Yeah.
And that, anyway, so re-listening that in the last week or so, working on the Phyllis episode, like when you were naming like, oh, in that time we did all these events and stuff. And I mean, I've done a lot of homebrewed live events. We've done all these beer camps and stuff since you moved to Oregon, but it was never like, I haven't done live events where it's with someone that I actually, like, if they mess with me, I actually trust their intervention. And I know we can have fun, and you're like, they're in on the bit of, I can go over the top because they'll cut me off and it'll be funny. Anyway, so like I told you, when Tony and I were going through it, he's like, man, Bo really knows how to do a live podcast with you. He's like, he's like, I just go, oh God, what's going to happen with Trip?
Just brace yourself.
And Bo's just like, and thank you.
Yeah. What's really, I was thinking about this as I flew home from New York last week, that in every area of my life, people generally experience me as Captain Chaos. I am so big and so rowdy, and can be intense, and but there are 2 relationships I have in my life. One was with my father, and one is with you, where, because you're such big personalities, and you're, for him, anointing, and for you, your
spirit,
your charisma, is such a driver, like an engine, that I transform from, like, shooting guard, let's say, to use the basketball analogy, or let's say in a car analogy, I transform, I become the transmission. Like, my heart and desire and motive is to get this big engine, because Jack Caputo called you a singularity, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I should have. Yeah, that's what that we needed that on video.
Yes, I have a picture of it.
I remember you took the picture when it happened. Yeah. Put it on the back of my next book.
But when you find a big engine, right? But somebody has to harness that and push that energy back to the tires, or you don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's very fun for me that growing up, as the oldest son in my father's shadow, and then following him into ministry, that, let's call it by God's grace, I have this thing that I'm well practiced at. And then you and I become friends, and it turns out that it happens to be the perfect little, gift, that I hope brings out the best in you, but allows me to piggyback into some conversations that I wouldn't have otherwise, right? And to get into some rooms and to meet some big time thinkers and practitioners and thought leaders and authors. And so it really is a great symbiotic relationship. But I have to tell you, people comment to me how strange it is that the most chaotic person they know plays this role on Homebrewed.
Look, it's it's like when Shaq left the Lakers, and Kobe's there, and you got and they're trying to figure out what to do. Like, what was the big shift before that? Kobe's like, I want to be traded, I want to get moved or whatever. Then they make the move for Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol was always on the All-Star team when he was in Minnesota. He's like leading offensive point guard and all, or power forward, and stuff. And then like you get he goes to the Lakers, where there's like if you're on the Lakers, and Kobe's there, you're gonna have to figure out how to work with Kobe. And then you get that like weird thing where they both became better because Pal's personality was like a genuine loving one, and then because he's having to work with Kobe, he got a little more like feisty. And over time, Pal influences Kobe, where he ends up becoming like notoriously loving girl dad. And then you have then they have this relationship that starts going well, and then Phil shows up, and it's like, let me here's how we're going to do this. We're going to move Lamar to the 6th man, Lamar Odom, put him in the 6th man, and then here's how the energy flows in this thing. And Lamar had been a star in another place, Gasol star elsewhere. Kobe would put up lots of points and they wouldn't get very far. Then boom, put him in the right place, and then things work well.
I didn't get most of that analogy, but I love your energy.
Yeah, good. It is a Laker deep cut, but
I know. I
always say
this is
once you get to the hour marker, I can talk about Lakers and Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that would be a great new addition for the first hour.
No Lakers or Lord of the Rings.
No, but after the hour mark, that's a really fun little parameter we could put in. I get lost in the Laker analogies. I just sorry.
Well, I just meant that both of them had that, like they were all both like you have these 3 figures. They're all stars in these different roles on teams, but then when they were together, they each learned from each other, but also like then it became like the Phil Jackson coached Lakers, and you went back to back.
Now I get
sticking it to the Celtics. Glorious.
Your second take was so much sharper. I'm glad you circled back on that.
Yeah, well, now
do we still say circle back? Is that out now?
You can circle back, or you can oval back. And now that you're 50, you could oval team. Oh,
that was a good wordplay. Oh no. I don't know about this.
Now you could oval team.
Oh my gosh. Hey, Trip. Last time you and I did this, we both lived in Los Angeles. You've covered some miles since then. Where'd you go?
Well, all right, I'll give the cliff notes just because we've gone a long time.
Yeah.
And but I think it's good for everyone to catch up with you. But
thanks.
If they listen to Homebrew, they've heard way too much of everything. I do. But the things that were fascinating, right, is I stayed in Los Angeles longer than you did, and then moved anticipating a position much like you that I then I taught, but then the hiring went for a different way.
Okay.
And then then I was at University of Edinburgh for 3 years during
3 years.
all the that
was the COVID period.
All the COVID stuff and everything. And the biggest things I think in that time were like personally was like multiple times where you think like, here was the plan I was given, right? Like, okay, you got to go to the best schools and you got to do this. And like, here's how you eventually get, a theology teaching job or whatever.
Mhm.
It got to the point where I'd gotten to the finals for positions multiple times where I'm like, I had contracts with all these different types of books, had your own book series, like, oh, they're all anything you needed
Mhm.
to jump through the hoops,
Mhm.
along with the fact that, the other entry level positions don't have a theology podcast that is big
Mhm.
and things, and then just didn't get it. Like, so to me, the big shift was I'm like, now I even did a postdoc and taught 3 years in Edinburgh and blah, blah. I was like, what else do I need to do?
Mhm.
And in all that time, the online classes, and the homebrewed
Mm.
community things and stuff all kind of kept growing,
Mm.
but they were just, I was doing them because I enjoy doing them, but it was like everyone else in my life was like, "Why are you beating your head against the wall and moving your family over and over again to
Mm.
get accepted into an academic system
Okay. Alright.
when, you know, like, you can have 3,000 people in your historical Jesus class with Dom and, like, that kind of stuff, right?" So, the even though I was kinda had grown all the things to make it sustainable, nothing I had to, like, get over the fact that my, like,
Mhm.
cherished identity of myself was getting to a destination where I was a
Mm.
full professor teaching
Mm.
systematic theology to
Mhm.
future ministers every year,
Mhm.
while my friends that were doing those things are like, "Yeah, but you don't have to go to faculty meetings. You get to connect with all these people and things online. You're figuring out how
Mm.
to do this kind of stuff in a new medium and blah, 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 blah." And so the big shift for me was kind of running into so many dead ends chasing that, that then we're sitting kind of towards the end of our time in Scotland going, do we want to stay permanently in Europe and things?
Oh
Or,
gosh.
because there were some opportunities to stay there,
Oh.
uh, and
Oh.
for lots of reasons, but none of the ones I got close on in the States came through.
Mm.
And our oldest, Elgin, um, was about to start high school, and he and I were talking, and
That's
he's like,
important.
"I really want to go to the same school and the same youth group for high school
For yeah,
because
okay.
I meet all of your friends from youth group in high school, and y'all are, like, still friends and hang out and have fun,
Oh,
and I've
wow.
moved so many times
Oh.
chasing my dream." And so
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
the thing. It was like, where can we live where we can not have to fly to see family, but they can't walk across a street, and
Mhm, you
the
got
schools are okay, and we can afford it. And so that's what has happened in the last year was, like,
wow.
making that decision. And while the outside version, it's easy to go, okay, in 3 weeks, it'll be 16 years since Chad and I did the first homebrewed episode.
Wow.
Like, okay, like, it's finally, like, what he's doing all the time. But, for 14 of it, it was, like, the thing I was using to hopefully get to where I wanted to go and had to admit, like, no, it's kinda become its own thing. And, why does everyone else around me go like, "No, like, obviously you've succeeded and are good at this because
Mm.
this is sustainable and you're
Huh,
wishing to be somewhere else."
that's really interesting. I'm
Um
glad I asked. That was
Yeah, so that's
yeah.
been like um, in going back into like, okay, well, if that's what I'm doing, how would I change differently what I do with all the podcast stuff?
Mhm.
That's why I ended up saying yes to doing the visiting professor thing at Luther because it's
Oh,
intensive, so I get to have the relationship with
yeah,
students in the class, but
that'd be fun.
and it's
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, and I put a lot more of my energy that before would have been for students or for
Mhm,
congregants
mhm.
into planning, like, beer camp and all the things around it, and,
That
like,
looked like a
planning.
big production.
Yeah, and it's like Tripp's youth minister energy goes there to go,
Yes.
how do you
Yes.
do half the people that come don't have a local community, so it's
Okay.
kind of like their like one of the few things where they know they get to like lean into their Jesus-y space and not have to lie about questions or identity and stuff. So like if you take that part of it more seriously and not just that I get to day drink with all my theology friends and talk, like, what do you do? Right. And so that's kind of helped like change that.
This is my job.
So,
it's not irresponsible. This is how I make a living.
Yeah. No, you know what I mean? Like it was weird, right? But like to get to the finals so many times for things.
Oh, you did?
And never get them. But like,
Yeah.
and to know the people that got them and go,
oh, really? Oh boy.
Now,
yeah, I mean,
look,
that was
I'm not saying that my sense of self is accurate. I just say to myself, if you're trying not to die as a seminary and, like,
why
isn't there like some bonus for the person that has met all the expectations, but also like seminary spend money for him to tell them about their school? Like if you just work there, like that's gotta be a perk of some sort. And like anyway.
Oh, you know what? You that comment, there's something important I left out of my story that I think is really vital to understand. I did have 2 advantages of why I was able to sort of move on from not making the finalists of the tenure track position. One was the 2 people that they did hire that year were both incredible people and scholars. And one was actually a Claremont grad. And I couldn't be more impressed with the quality of the people that they hired. And so that helps a lot, right? So you're not like cocking your head to the side going, really? You're like, I get it. So that helped.
You're like, well, that's reasonable.
The other thing is I trip during COVID. I did not write my dissertation and I timed out of the PhD program. I exceeded my time limit.
Right.
And so I am ABD, all but dissertation. So the professorial dream for me also had to go away because the reality is I could not conceive of sitting in front of a computer for hundreds of hours. Something weird happened to me in COVID where, because everything was Zoom church and email updates and everything was online, I got fried at looking at a computer, and it has taken me like honestly 2 years to I overdid it, and I could not muster up the energy to write a dissertation.
Well, I don't think whenever people ask about doing PhDs and stuff at this point, I'm like, are you independently wealthy or are they paying you to do it? Because otherwise, like the number of people I know who like in the year they will have to adjunct 7 classes just to make their payments on their student loans is so high. It's nuts. Like I don't the logic of going there has changed so dramatically. I mean, when I started, PhD program was right at the big economic collapse in 2008, and things have just continued to get worse. Yesterday, there was this article for the American Association of University Professors, and that non-tenure track positions of all types account for 70% of instructional staff at American higher education.
Whoa.
And when you hear non-tenure track, for those of you that are maybe talking to kids about where to go to college or thinking about seminaries or div schools, that's a real important question to ask. The higher the percentage of non-tenure track positions is the higher percentage of faculty who won't have basic job security and economic security and pension system and and the things you think come with a professor. The number of my friends that did their PhD and then went back to get a certification to teach high school because they actually made more as a philosophy PhD as a high school teacher than doing all the adjunct and stuff is significant.
Whoa.
Especially if you take some of these blue states that are hiring, like where you get a job and you're doing your certificate, ones that are funding public education better.
Yeah.
To move to a particular state, and you have 2 years to go through these things, but you're already teaching something adjacent to what you're doing. And I actually think it's a great idea, especially when it helps high schoolers get more men in high schools, right? Like the university has like a concentration of old white guys teaching that has been problematic. But under like high school and middle school, the benefits of having more gender equity in education is huge, especially for students that are don't come from context or have the habits of educational success. One of the biggest features for catching up to grade level and long-term success is in like middle school and high school for boys on the margin is having a male teacher.
Is that right?
Because of the mentorship, the seeing yourself in someone that values education and all these kinds of things. The social psych behind it is really fascinating. But so like I completely get why if you're thinking of you have a teacher shortage in a state and like giving incentives for people with PhDs and stuff. It's just sad for like, if you think of the amount of debt some people have for their PhD to then have to like do a few more certificates so you can teach high school history when you have 2 books on Kierkegaard. You're like, but
3 quick side notes, because that was some interesting stuff. So real quick, number 1, when somebody is thinking about a PhD, you know what? No one told me, but I think is what I would tell somebody. The advice that I would give is it's really, you have to think about it as 3 very long races. So your coursework is like that's a degree essentially. Then your qualifying exams are exactly as long as your coursework. It's like that. It's really intense and takes just as much energy. And then you have to write a dissertation, which is like, so if I probably still would have gone in and done the PhD, even if I knew right how this would end with being ABD, because it was transformative. It was one of the best experiences of my life. I mean, I don't even know if I would be a person of faith or married or anything if it weren't for what I experienced at Claremont. I mean, it transformed me, and I'm so grateful for it. But wish I had known that, hey, big guy, you're going to have to run 3 consecutive marathons.
Yeah, while having your full-time job and dealing with all of the adulting and, add all those stuff on.
So maybe don't have a job and a half in the local church ministry, right? I had a job and a half at Westwood. And so it's like, and also be a part of a growing podcast platform, right? Like, focus up, man.
Yeah, I have I could definitely see that. I've thought, well, I don't know who it had been if I hadn't done all that, but
Right. I know.
Also, I probably would have done it different if you get, but you take 20 years to figure out your regrets.
Yeah.
I
Well, I just
they add up.
accumulated
So
them. I
it takes you
accumulated them.
longer. It takes you longer. I started having regrets real quickly when I consolidated all my student loans last week. And
That's the other 2 things I wanted to say. I just got an email that I have to start paying back my student loans, that my deferment is over. And so I saw that bill. So I'm hoping if people like the Theology Nerd Throwdown. So here's my dream is to use some of the stuff I learned to help pay for what I learned.
Reasonable.
Okay. Last thing.
Though, I would always say that if someone's sitting there and maybe they feel really, really burdened by, I don't know, money they won't spend, and they would just like to redirect it to pay off student loans, I would like to give them an opportunity to be celebrated. That's why I just because see, some people may go like, "Whoa, I've always wanted to pay for someone else's student loans," and I just
Can I just say how bullshit it is that in the Lord's Prayer, sometimes people say, "Forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors," but no, that's not true with student loans. I like trespasses better.
You like trespasses?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel trespassed when I get the student loan update.
Two quick things. We should do a future episode on theological education institutions because I just figured out, like, my dad's seminary closed in New York this past fall. And that means that every school I have ever been associated with, either as a student or a professor, is either bankrupt, has closed, gone defunct, or has had to move buildings to consolidate because they couldn't afford their campus. And so this is true, like even what used to be George Fox Seminary became Portland Seminary, but it actually retracted back into like George Fox University down in Newburgh, which was ironic that the year they changed their name to Portland, they sort of moved out of Portland. That's weird. But Simpson College has had to do that in California. Similar thing. Claremont School of Theology. Fuller, we know. Where I started, Canadian Bible College, has become Ambrose in Calgary. ATS, Alliance Theological Seminary, closed. Like this, every seminary, residential seminary in America is having trouble, right? I think it'd be fun for us to talk about, I mean, not fun, but interesting for us to talk about why and like the implications of that.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to say, when you become a Methodist, one of the reasons I'm a licensed local pastor is that I can never be, or at least for the next 10 years, I can never be ordained as an elder or a deacon or anything like that, even an associate member, because you have to answer 7 traditional questions in order to become a Methodist. One of those questions is, do you have enough debt that you are in danger of being like, what's the word? It's like a twofold thing. Could you be seduced or tempted?
Yeah.
Towards, or to be embarrassed. You have to say no to this. But dude, I'm $250,000 in debt to student loans. That's more than my mortgage, right? To student loans.
Yeah.
So I cannot, in good conscience, with integrity, answer some of the traditional questions to become a Methodist minister until I pay back, ironically, can I just say, to my Methodist school for my Methodist education. I have to pay back my student loans before I can answer the traditional questions with integrity and become a Methodist minister. There's something weird about that, right?
Well, yeah, it's not only weird, but also that means they know their future graduates have to answer those questions.
Bingo.
Right? Like, so, it's one thing to talk about prehension and concrescence in order to affirm your own interpretation of the incarnation, right? Like you're like, well, I can do that. But, underneath it, when you get to that question, you're like, well, I mean, I think I'm prehending the influence of debt slavery and economic humiliation.
Tripp, listen to this plan I've come up with. This is like a life plan. I figured out that from the beginning of my ministry until I moved to George Fox was 15 years. From 2008, when I moved to George Fox, till I turned 50, I moved here, 15 years. From here until I retire, 15 years. And then I plan to live 15 more, right? So I'm at the halfway point. Okay. So here's my plan. if I pay back my student loans in monthly installments for the next 10 years, government will forgive them, right? So that means at 10 years from now, I will be able to become an associate member at Methodist, bump up my retirement plan.
There you go.
For 5 years before I retire. That's my plan.
Yeah. Well, man, maybe the Methodist bishops can, let everyone know about how cool this plan is you got working on here.
You know what they say about your best laid plans, right?
They are obviously going to work out. So trust the process.
Trust the process. Stick to it no matter what. Hey, man, this has been fun. Hey, I have literally nothing to do today, but I assume you do. I mean, how about this? How about we put a pin in this, and then next week, let's talk about changes in theology, culture, and technology that we have noticed in the last 6 years.
Oh yeah, let's do it. I think it'd be fun, and that'd be more like a normal TNT thing. This is like the catch up.
This is like a reunion
party. And you're putting your coffee in a dishwasher and stuff like you had to get used to my box over here, like coffee in the dishwasher. Coffee in the dishwasher. You had to get used to that. There might be a soundboard. I actually have a whole nother. I can change my collection of what the buttons do. I have ones that are all Lord of the Rings sounds too.
Oh, interesting. I have an honest question about the soundboard. Okay. Did you buy it? Did someone give it to you? Are you sure it wasn't a gag gift?
Are you suggesting that somebody could have donated the podcast to get this, trying to sabotage?
I'm just saying it's dubious. It's dubious at best.
When Diana and I will do these things for like the homebrewed community in her cottage community called Ruining Dinner, where we talk about religion and politics, right? Like, usually it's like once a month, and now that gets closer to the election, we'll do every other week kind of thing. But someone that really enjoyed that sent it, and I once I got sound effects, I just was like, this is great. Just to be able to hit an air horn, people love it, Bo.
The air horn is awesome.
Actually,
you know what it reminds me of?
Certain people anticipate it at this point, but would I use the word love? No, I think it's endearing. It's endearing.
It reminds me of this sketch I heard where these shock jocks would call people. It was like a John Cena bit. And these shock jocks would call, and then they would ask somebody a question, and no matter how they answered it, they would do this John Cena. It's one of the worst. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. It's so invasive. And they get this one woman on the phone who hates professional wrestling, and she loses her blessed mind over this thing. So they keep calling her back, and it just gets weirder and weirder.
Okay, so next week we'll talk about the changes, and we can pick one of the sports talk radio gimmick things. I made a list of all these sports talk radio things, things that people do on sports talk radio, and I was like, here's how we can turn them into theology related bits, and we don't know if they'll be good. So here's my theory: is we do like this, like our actual plan up front. Then when we get to the hour, when I can refer to the Lakers and Lord of the Rings again.
Yes.
Then we can try out those bits, and then they're not official, right? So if someone was listening and they're like, "Oh, I want to make sure, I want to keep. Oh, look, we want to make sure this keeps happening. I got to tell people we'll support this." So then Bo, like, actually, we might have to bribe him to hang out with Tripp after a month. Who knows, right? But so we got to save the experimentation to the end. Give them what they come. But I'll just say, like, knowing that we both love Lord of the Rings. And you got some tattoos too, which
I do.
And I got see the Horn of Gondor sound effect right there. Like maybe when it gets to the hour point, I could.
I'm going on an adventure.
And you're like, whoa. So you're like, if we were doing this live, and maybe like in a
it'd be fun.
covered area, like at Wild Goose West, and we just decided at 1 hour point we pulled out pipes.
Long bottom leaf.
Or from the whole time, every time we get a refill.
Comes in paints?
We're like, what
It comes in paints?
Oh, great.
Comes in bites.
But I did my buddy Nick, who's like an editor at the Malorn, the Tolkien Journal, we did live streams after each episode of Rings of Power. And in the middle of the Rings of Power show on Amazon, there's Elrond is friends with Doran, the prince under in Moria. And there's this one line in the show that I laughed so hard that someone sent me the MP3 of it, and it is now a bit. But if people don't know the context, every time I hit it, especially if people don't know I have a soundboard, I occasionally
give me the meat and give it to me raw.
Oh my!
The dwarf is looking at Elrond. He's like, trying to beat around the bush, and it's thinking. All of a sudden, the dwarf is
give me the meat and give it to me raw.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, like, if I was it, just like Doran and Elrond, this friendship that's so exciting. Like, when I think of someone that would like to give me the meat and give it to me raw, there's no one I would ever, I would want to nerd out with my geek out.
Oh boy,
like the BoDaddy.
This is getting saucy, not sassy, saucy.
Oh, really? It is? Oh, yeah, dear friends. You too can get sassy with us. Next time on Theology Nerd Throwdown.
Trip, here's a plan. Invitation. Maybe a call. I don't know. What would you think about doing this every Tuesday for a little bit to get our groove back and see if people are engaging it, in a way that is sort of a vote of confidence? And how does that sound?
Good.
All right.
Yeah.
So what if our sign off, like at the end, you say, stay zesty, and I say, see you next Tuesday.
All right.
No, it's a little.
We should try it. We should try it.
All right. It's a little.
I'll fade the music in like this. And then when it's time to wrap up, I'm like, stay zesty. Like that.
And see you next Tuesday. I don't think I should say it. Now that I think about it, I think I would lose a Claremont